I know you're highly disappointed today that you get to see me in person rather than that riveting little video I recorded to introduce myself last week. I actually had one of my former students come up and say, you know, that video was kind of boring. I was deflated. I couldn't teach for like 3 minutes after that. Anyway, welcome in person to this year's NIA Lecture Series. Glad you're all here, and we're very glad to welcome Zach Smith today. It's difficult for you that obviously you haven't had this course before. It's hard to talk about people when they're like right there. And they're going to stand up and tell you all the things that I'm about to tell you that he's done. So I'm not going to do that. I've got 2 pages of amazing bio for Zach. So I'll sort of cut it down. Zach describes himself as a serial entrepreneur, having never had a, quote, real job. He's always starting, selling, running, and managing businesses, including one that he founded called Founded Today, which is the world's most successful crowdfunding firm and the largest provider of crowdfunding services worldwide. That company has raised over $150 million and counting for various crowdfunding campaigns in just the last 3.5 years. From an educational standpoint, for all you aspiring graduates, Zach graduated right here from Weber State University's Goddard School of Business and Economics, summa cum laude, with a business degree specializing in accounting. He speaks fluent Mandarin. He is the co-author of an upcoming book, Funded, and he is also the co-founder of CrowdCon, the largest virtual crowdfunding training and education summit in the world. He's newly married to his beautiful bride who's here today, so be nice. And Zach, it's all yours.
Thank you. All right, got a lot to talk about. I was originally told, kind of tell the story of Funded Today and then tell some lessons along the way. So it's a little different than I normally do. A lot of times I teach exactly what we do so that you can go and take these principles and start a business. But today I'm going to kind of talk a little bit more big picture. And I've come up with 21 lessons learned along the way to raising $150 million. So with no further ado, as you heard in the introduction, I consider myself a serial entrepreneur. What does a serial entrepreneur mean? It's not the serial killer type you guys are thinking of, right? But it's somebody who is seriously committed to entrepreneurship in every single facet. And I love this definition. I just found it on the internet, but it really resonated with me. A serial entrepreneur is an individual who, rather than working as an employee, runs small businesses, sometimes they become big, and assumes all the risks and rewards of a given business, venture, idea, or good or service offered for sale. Entrepreneurship's messy. You'll see in this presentation, kind of looks clean and cut, but as we get going on further, you're going to see the slides are kind of weird, the titles are all over the place. That's kind of how I feel about entrepreneurship too. It's not cookie cutter, it's not clear cut. I was almost late today because of a bunch of stuff I was dealing with, even 4 years down the road. That's how entrepreneurship is. There's always new challenges. There's always new things to deal with. And I want to talk a little bit about that journey. I'm going to abbreviate the story because the 21 lessons we talk about, there'll be lots more stories in there. And many of you heard this, some of you might not have, but I was a lot like every single one of you. I was at Weber State, and this was actually one of my favorite classes, by the way. This is you guys, probably your first time being in it, but Curtis, he works for me, he's right over there. He was in this class not even too long ago as well, but it was always one of my favorite classes because people like me would come in and tell exactly how they did it and inspire you so that you might be able to have the same sort of success that I've had. And that's why I love this sort of class. So I was in a class just like this, and I began one of my first businesses. It was called Epic Profit Group, simultaneous to going to school. And I had come home from a 2-year LDS mission, and I saw this guy who was really, really successful. He kind of had the stereotypical stuff you see on the internet, like big house, fancy car, and I was like, what is he doing? He's so close to me, and I kind of knew him before. And I said, what are you doing? He's like, come over, I'll show you. 1 day led to 2, 2 led to a month led to a year. We're 2.5 years into this thing. I have made like $30,000, and we launch. And it's a very successful launch, and we make millions of dollars. And kind of the birth of successful entrepreneurship was born for me, at least at a big e-commerce level. I didn't like what I was doing though, and so another year passed. He and I parted ways. He bought me out, and I started a consulting firm called Start Doing Business. Start Doing Business basically worked just like I was learning in school. to be an accountant. I didn't necessarily want to go work for the Big Four. I had kind of plans to be an attorney, but I thought, well, since I'm doing business, and I've been doing business my whole life, what if I do this consulting firm? And what if I charge by the hour on retainer? And that's what I did. And it became fairly successful. I had lots and lots of clients paying me hourly, paying me on retainer. And one of those clients happened to be a local client. Has anybody heard of the Roo Sport before? Anybody seen it? Some have, okay. Yeah, it's pretty successful now. They've been operating for about as long, maybe even a little bit longer than Funded Today. All over the world, multi-million-dollar business now. And it was a little attachable running wallet. I should have brought it with me. Snapped on your waistband, held your keys, credit cards. They didn't have any money at the time though. And crowdfunding was kind of just becoming a big thing. And they came to me, they said, Zach, have you heard of this thing called crowdfunding? And to be honest, I had. Kickstarter, Indiegogo. Who's heard of crowdfunding? Has anybody heard of that? I imagine, yeah, we're talking with a little younger crowd here, so you guys have probably heard about it a lot. I hadn't heard of it. I researched it, I looked into it, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. I found out that the Statue of Liberty was one of the first biggest crowdfunded things done to secure the granite base. And then I looked back in history at the Medici family, the Medici family, right? And all the things that they did to preserve the arts and contribute. And crowdfunding has kind of become that new thing. And so we jumped in on it, and it was pretty successful. We took this Roo Sport campaign from napkin idea. They came to me with a prototype that she had sewed up herself. We found the distribution, we found the manufacturers, and we launched it on crowdfunding. And we raised $115,000 in 30 days. And it was pretty exciting. We were like, wow, there's something here. And not only did we say there's something here, a lot of people suddenly saw this little mom and pop shop raise 115 grand in 30 days and say, how did they do it? And they started asking. And Funded Today was essentially born. And that is the story I kind of want to talk about today. So these are some of the products that we've raised money for. Many of them you've seen. The Bowbacks travel jacket. In fact, I'm not dressed all sloppy today, and I'm not trying to be like Mark Zuckerberg or something. This is everything that we funded. This is an original grain watch. I've got a Basics wallet in my pocket. These are McMacular jeans. This is a Silver Air shirt. This is a Trackline belt. I'm wearing Silver Air socks. These are Wilcox boots. Everything I wear is something that we have brought to life, from napkin all the way through, and it's pretty fun. Got some big press on it, of course, and became pretty famous business-wise as a result. And I kind of want to share that story with you today. So 21 lessons we learned along the way. Lesson number 1, entrepreneurship is in the blood. It's not for everyone, and that's okay. My business partner, Thomas Alvord, I should say, he's a huge part of this success. He couldn't be here today, but everything I'm going to be talking about, I might say me, I might say us. I'm talking about all of us together when I talk about that. So that's a picture of a kid mowing a lawn. That's what I was like. I was the guy selling snow cones. And I wouldn't just sell snow cones. I would go door to door and line up orders and wheel a radio flyer wagon around to deliver them at a young age. My business partner would wash cars. He'd sell See's candy. There was a lot of hustle. I looked up some stories too. Mark Zuckerberg, a lot of his coders would sometimes, he would stay up all night, and then they'd stay up all night with him. And I'm not of the mindset that like serial entrepreneurship has to be this hustle and grind that you see like glamorized on the internet. But I do believe sometimes you have to work really hard. I think there's a mindset, and I notice with some of the new people that I hire too. Ooh, this is hard. I have to work 48 hours a week. It's like, yeah, I worked 100 hours a week for years of my life to get here. And I think eventually you can get to the point where it's not like that. But if you think that it's just going to be an amazing story, I think every single story has been put into theatrics. I think every story's been shortened and condensed. Just like I just told you that story of Funded Today. You're going to see as I go along and tell them more stories, it's a lot more complex than that to get to where we've got. Realize it's going to be hard work. Realize it's in your blood. And sometimes it's not for everyone, and that's perfectly okay. It's perfectly fine if you don't want to be an entrepreneur. I need people who aren't necessarily as entrepreneurial to work in my company, and they can still do really well. Number 2, voracious curiosity. Be a dream student. I thought of myself in your situation here. The picture might be kind of small, but down here, you can kind of see I graduated outstanding baccalaureate, outstanding graduate of accounting, summa cum laude. I worked really hard while in school, even though I was operating a really successful business. And if I can do it, I don't really consider myself that smart. I know maybe people are like, oh, you're smart, you're different. I just think I work really, really hard. I was at the football game for Weber State not too long ago, just this last week, and I ran into a person, And we got talking about Damian Lillard, most famous person probably to ever graduate from Weber State. Everybody heard of Damian Lillard? Okay, good. So Damian Lillard was told when there were people that would watch him in the gym, and he was shooting like 1,000 shots, and it looked like he was just going to faint and pass over. And then he got down and did 100 push-ups. And then he ran over and he was doing some bench pressing, and they're like, I thought he was going to quit after he shot the 1,000 shots. I think that's the sort of mindset you have to have. I mean, Lillard was pretty unrecognized when he came to Utah. Now he's one of the best point guards in the whole NBA. And I think a lot of that really stemmed from his education at Weber State, the hard work ethic that he put in, Randy Ray, things like that. So be a dream student. And then the part I really wanted to touch on this point is voracious curiosity. When Thomas and I were putting this presentation together, we really wanted to say, what made this happen? How can we distill this down to its essence so that anybody could take these principles, could take these lessons, and then go do exactly what we have done? And we tried to think internally, what makes us different? What makes us more unique or interesting, perhaps? And I think it's voracious curiosity. Here's a question for you. You're all going to school, you're reading a lot of textbooks, you're studying. How many books have you ordered? How many books are you reading right now? It's a rhetorical question, but you can think about it. I think that matters. How many articles are you reading if you're not into books? How many things are you researching? How deep down the rabbit hole do you go? I find that all the time. My wife will tell you, you are the most curious person I have ever met. Shut up. Learn just by listening sometimes. And there's truth to that. I think it's actually true. But at the same time, I consider myself really well-rounded. I care about learning. Even if it's something that sounds strange, I go down that rabbit hole as far as I can. The curiosity never stops. And I think that's what led to all the pivots and things that we've done at Funded Today. How many books have you read? What are you reading right now? And here's one for you, because I get anxious sometimes. I ask my wife. I've got probably like 200 books stacked up around my room and then like 500 on my Kindle. It's crazy, and I haven't read hardly any of them. It's called an anti-library. It's from Ryan Holiday. Just because you haven't read the books tells you how much you don't know by looking at the books you haven't read yet. So don't get stressed out. Buy the book. Always buy the book. Always read the article. Always study. Always ask the question. One day you'll read it. It'll remind you what you don't know if you don't read it. Number 3, find a mentor and go work for a good boss. This one might sound crazy to you because I've never really worked for a boss, but I thought deep into it, and I'd say my dad was my boss. My dad runs a pretty successful construction firm. He never really took the jump to be a full-time entrepreneur, but he is pretty good in the summer with construction. And I worked with him from about 7 years on doing construction. He taught me hard work. I look back and I think, it had to have been my dad that taught me to never give up. When you're on a roof and it's 120 degrees in terms of how hot it is beating down on you, and you're doing that for 12, 14-hour days, I think it teaches you a work ethic that is hard to get anywhere else. Find a mentor. What did I do? When I returned home from the mission, I saw somebody that was really successful, and I asked them. That's the voracious curiosity again, too. I said, what are you doing? And that led to me going over to the mansion and working, and 1 day, 2 days, a month, a year. Do that. I mean, you have people like me who went to Weber State in your network. Leverage those. Interact with people that have been there, that can help you. I've learned tons of things along my journey that you might not have learned yet. And there's lots of people at Weber State. There's lots of people in your network that can do that. Find yourself a mentor. I did that with quite a few people. A couple nights ago, we were having some issues in our business with a couple things that was really frustrating me. I reached out to about 20 people. I sent a canned form letter to 20 people that I consider really successful and people that I can trust. And it just said, hey, we're really struggling with this. What would you do? I've already got back 11 replies from those 20 people. And I've shared that stuff with people in my company. Like, that's profound. That's great. That's good. And we've already made changes. And we've already made updates. We're always doing this sort of thing. It matters to have good mentors. Even when you're successful, you still need those mentors. Lesson number 4, connection is everything. The story I tell of Funded Today, where we raised $115,000, could not have happened without Thomas Alvord. He's my business partner. I raised about $50,000 on my own before I hired him and brought him on. And Thomas Alvord had been working in the political arena, doing different political campaigns for presidential elections and senators in the Deep South. He was really successful at it. And we had been talking for years. I didn't just say, hey, come help me. Come save the day here. Come do this. When you connect with people, it is not about immediately asking for a favor. It is about giving as much as you can, networking for as long as you can, so that one day down the road, you can say, Thomas, here's where we're at, here's what we've done, and a business partnership is formed. That's exactly what happened. Thomas came on in less than, I had spent like maybe 2/3 of the time on my own to raise $50,000. In the remaining 33% of the time, we raised the other 115. It's huge to have connections. Connections are everything. And you hear it kind of lauded about, like, that's networking. I used to even think networking, that sounds stupid. But when you actually realize what it takes, it matters. At Funded Today, we have networked to death. We had an amazing relationship with Indiegogo that led to millions of dollars in revenue. We have an amazing networking opportunity right now where we've partnered with a very well-connected person in press. I was just talking to my sister-in-law, and she's going to school at UVU. And I told her that she's getting a degree in PR, media, and advertising. And I said, and she's like, what can I do? I just feel like I'm going to graduate and I'm not going to get a job. Like, the market seems hard and I'm probably not going to make that much money if I do get a job. The median income's like 50, 60,000. And I talked with her and I told her, it's literally about networking. Go to school, get your education, work as hard as you can. But in the meantime, she wants to maybe do fashion and get into that sort of media. I said, become best friends with 3 or 4 journalists at every single one of the top 100 fashion places. Like their stuff on Twitter, comment on their stuff on Facebook. Never ask for anything. Be specific. If they talk about an article with some cool hat, I love that hat and I loved how you described it like this. Like, do that sort of stuff. Hey, I'm in the area today. Can I take you to lunch? Can we go to coffee? Can we network? Can we chat? When she graduates, if she does that, imagine how powerful her resume is going to be. Hey, I'm best friends with the top 100 people in the fashion industry, and they'll write about anything I ask them to. I'm hiring that person and I'm paying them 6 figures a year. Connections, everything. Just go for it. Fell fast. The story of Funded Today is abbreviated. After the Rue Sport success, it wasn't like we had some amazing multi-million-dollar company. In fact, I went on my merry way and kept doing my consulting. Thomas went on his merry way and kept doing his stuff. But like I said, everybody wanted to hire us. Everybody's like, what did they do? How did it work? And so one of these people was FreeWaves, a client out of Orlando, Florida. And they begged us. You can see the point where we came on, right here. They had about 100 hours left when all was said and done. And they needed to raise about $100,000 more. Crowdfunding has something called all or nothing funding, meaning because they'd raised around 190, they had a goal for 300 grand. So they needed to raise 110,000 more. And they only had 100 hours to do it. The risk was very, very great. I was a conservative. And Thomas ran some numbers, he did a test, and he said, it looks like it's gonna work. I think we can make it happen. And he went for it. Took his dad's credit card, and he maxed it out, because we spent a lot of money to do this, and he got him funded to $325,000. And I got like a consulting referral fee for it. And I said, okay, you've convinced me. Let's start a business. Fell fast, go for it. It would have been terrible if that would have happened, but it wouldn't have been the end of the world. I would have helped him, I could have backed him up, I had some success. Make calculated risks, but when you go for it, just go for it. That's why I show Jackie Robinson still on home plate there. Go for it. You have so many chances at a young age to go for it. I mean, I just turned 30, I already feel kind of old. I feel like I can't take as many risks anymore. And that's wrong, of course it's wrong. A lot of people are successful in their 50s finally. But you are young for the most part. And even if you're not young, even if you're my age or older, go for it. Maybe in your 50s and 60s is when you be a little more conservative. Take chances, take risks. One of them is going to pay off. And then if it doesn't pay off, you can fail fast and move on to the next thing and the next thing. And these next several points and lessons go exactly in line with that. Lesson number 6, one failure does not yourself a failure make. I love this story. Entrepreneurship, when you fail, is like losing the death of a loved one. I care so much about my baby Funded Today. I never want it to die. And I know my clients feel the same way because they get so sad. It's devastating when we're unable to raise them money or they can't do it on their own and they come to us seeking our help. And you feel like an absolute loser and a failure and the whole world's going to hate you and you're a fool. Like I worry if Funded Today were to one day die, oh man, how terrible. And I don't even remember all the amazing things that have happened and all the success we've had that most people are never going to experience. This is one of my favorite stories. This is a client called Don Wilder. He started out with a belt. Looks pretty good, right? It's kind of similar to the one I'm wearing even. It was very unsuccessful though. Who knows why? Because this one was really successful. It's hard to know. For some reason, the market did not want that product. But Don Wilder, rather than thinking that the world hated him and he was stupid and we were terrible, said, screw it. I'm going to invent a new idea. And he did. He pivoted within about 6 months and he invented the Apex laptop stand. And within 40 days from that launch, 3 to 6 months down the road, we had raised him over $500,000. And now he's a multimillionaire and he's done a lot of projects with us. He didn't just focus on that first failure. And he's had some failures along the way too. This story's abbreviated. He'll launch a campaign and it'll fail, and then he'll launch another one and it'll be successful. He's got a good e-commerce business with all kinds of different products that fit into his product mix. One failure does not a failure make. Be committed to success, not your idea of success. This goes the same way. We have so many people. I believe in statistical significance. Anybody taking the stats classes up here? They were some of my favorite. I love those classes. I think that's one thing you're going to use your whole life. It matters. We use statistical significance to determine if we can raise money for projects or not. It's not luck. It's not guesswork. We know earnings per view. We know cost per click. We know cost per mil. We look at all of those analytics, all of that data. And when it says that the product isn't working, we can say, this belt raised $1 million. This belt raised $500,000. Your belt didn't. This belt's EPV was 985. Your belt's was 0.36. When you can speak about those sorts of things, you know there's something wrong. We have something called the 7 Ps, and that's a whole other story. But there's something wrong with one of those Ps with your product. And that's why it isn't working. So if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Move on, pivot, tweak it. That's what Don Wilder did. And this example is Spine Gym. A lot of us didn't think this was going to work. I mean, it looks kind of like a strange, weird product, right? The lady's sitting out here looking at her window. It strengthens your core. It makes you kind of have good balance and stability. So it's about to ship right now. This product has raised $1.4, $1.5 million now. And no one really thought it was going to work. It's pretty strange. Google it. You can look it up. Success does not indicate future success. Lesson number 8. This is one of my favorite stories. The Baubax travel jacket is one of the most famous crowdfunding campaigns of all time. Anybody heard of that one? I think it's the 5th or 6th most funded. $9, $10 million. When you count Indiegogo, Windemand, $12, $13 million raised. We were responsible for about $5 million of that raise. Crazy thing is, a year later, have you ever heard of the wireless charging apparel? Absolutely failed. He spent $50,000 making his video. He spent like $180,000 marketing it. Didn't even raise any money, and all that money went down the drain and he lost it all. This guy was a genius, right? He invented the Baubax travel jacket. Never think you're a genius. Never think you're the most successful person in the room. Always realize that success is short-lived. Success can be fleeting. And if you're not staying on top of your game, if you're not being cutting edge and you start to think that you're the best in the world and arrogance sets in, I think you're going to fail. And I think I wouldn't say that Haral was this way. Haral Sangavi's the creator, but I think he got excited and thought, I know what I'm doing. I'm going to kill it. And he didn't do everything he did to invent that really, really awesome jacket. And this one obviously was something nobody wanted. Literally nobody bought it. Like, it was terrible. Lesson number 9. Pareto's principle of 80-20 works. Anybody heard of Pareto's principle, 80-20? I love it. I see it in everything. You can see it in things as boring as taxes. 80% of all the taxes paid by 20% of all the people. But you can see it in business quite a bit. In our business, it's the same way. We have a successful campaign like Spine Gym. We have a successful campaign like Korihana, Baubax. For that particular month, it makes up 80% of the revenue of the company. We have salespeople in our company, 2 or 3 salespeople that just absolutely dominate. No matter what we do, we hire, fire, we get new people. These 2 people always rise to the top. They represent 80% of the results. You can see that in every single thing. And when you can recognize 80-20, and when you can recognize those patterns and then apply them and take action in those sorts of things, you can be really, really successful. And it's important to recognize that. Everybody in our company is like, 80-20, are we doing, and then when we invent new things, why are we doing this? Is that giving us 80% of our revenue now? No, it's like only 10% of our revenue. Why are we still messing around with it? Like, think that way. Think that way in everything you do. What can you do with 20% of your time to generate 80% of results? That's going to make it so you don't do that hustle and grind entrepreneurship long term. It's going to make it so you be focused, so you know what to do, so you know what you're talking about, so you can be successful. 80-20 works, and we've seen it in so many instances. Number 10, market size matters. This one is really interesting. One of my points down the road is going to be about how you need to just make money. So many people are like, I need to go get money. I need to go raise money. I need an angel. I want some venture capital. I'm against that. And it's not bad by any means. I mean, you can make a ton of money doing that. I've just never done it. I've always done a bootstrap. So all my principles are about serial entrepreneurship, are about using your own money, leveraging your network, leveraging your talents. And that's the same case here with market size matters. What I want to hit on is know your market. Everybody, you take those marketing classes in college and you're like, oh, this is dumb. Why am I doing this? It actually matters. And here's why it matters. The crowdfunding industry that I work in, rewards-based crowdfunding, is about $1 to $1.3 billion a year. So it's a pretty decent sized market, but it's nothing crazy. E-commerce is like nearly $1 trillion. And that's the big market. And the sub niche I play in is rewards-based crowdfunding. If you start a business and your market isn't big enough and you suddenly have success, suddenly you're capped out at making $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 a year maybe. That's what happened to my business partner. When he was doing this political fundraising marketing stuff, his market was so small that he was capped out. He couldn't do any more money. Right now in crowdfunding, as exciting as it is and as much as I love it, it's plateaued. Last 2 or 3 years, it's kind of like this. It's not doing this. You want to be in a market that is growing if you can. But you can be a cash cow in a market like ours because it's big enough. Market size matters a ton, and you need to figure that out before you go and spend a ton of time doing something, or you might be working in an industry where you'd be better off working for somebody else. And that goes right in line with lesson number 11, the STAR principle. This is done by a guy named Richard Koch, really, really successful guy. He actually talks a lot about 80-20 as well. But what I believe in the most is STARS. High growth and the leader in the industry. That's what we were for several years. We're a cash cow now. We're the leader in the industry, but it's a low growth industry. What does growth mean? 10% or more a year. Our revenues are still growing exponentially every single year, but it's not because crowdfunding is growing. It's because we're expanding horizontally. We're doing things within the industry to increase value and add more services that we can offer. Make sure you try to get into a STAR industry, and that's easy. Here's one takeaway. Go to Google Trends and type in something you're thinking about. Look at the chart. You can do it with crowdfunding. Type it in right now, and you'll see what it looks like. And look at that over 5 years, and then dial in and look at that over 1 or 2 years. And I think if you do that, you're going to get a good idea of whether you're in a market that's growing, whether you're in a market that's declining, or whether you're in a market that's kind of stagnating or plateauing. Lesson number 12, margins matter. I tell this to my clients all the time. They're like, you take 35%? That's a lot. And I say, Apple makes about 67% for every single 67% for every single iPhone they sell. Pretty dang good margins. If you build a business and you're selling your product for $10 and it costs you $8 to produce, what are you doing? But people do that all the time. You'd be surprised. I'd say 80% of the people we work with are like, I can't afford that. I'm like, if you cannot spend money to make money, you don't have a business. You don't have anything. You have a very stupid idea. Reduce your costs, reduce your risks, and then increase your price. Margins matter. And I'm talking about it at a product level, but margins matter in an industry too. This is kind of a chart of how the industries go, and our margins are better than any of these, even still, even with the plateauing of this industry. You want to make sure when you're building your business, when you're building your ideas, you're counting in for margin. Or once again, you're not an entrepreneur. You're simply an employee of your own company, working for yourself, not making the money you deserve for the hours that you're putting in. Lesson number 13. Your greatest competition comes from within. I love this one. This is a lesson you don't learn, and this is one I want you all to think about actually right now too. You don't learn this one unless you hear somebody else tell it to you. But you can prepare for it proactively because I'm telling it to you right now. First, a story. American Express and Chase. So American Express was the leader in luxury cards for really rich people, you know, that sort of spending card. It's called like the American Express Platinum or the American Express Black Card, things like that. Well, some of the executives who were part of those programs decided they didn't like American Express, and they left. And they knew all the internal workings, and they knew everything about it. And so they did something with Chase and their reserve cards. And they created tons of competition, and literally has hurt American Express quite a bit. Amazon and Jet. Everybody thinks of Amazon. Who thinks of Jet? Anybody heard of Jet? Is that popular here? Yeah, see? It's rising. Amazon's facing extreme competition from Jet. Guess who Jet is? A guy who knew a lot about Amazon, who was there early on, who decided, I don't like Amazon. I'm leaving. So a couple lessons you can learn from this. Treat your people really, really well. You never want them to leave. Even when they want to leave, say, don't leave, because you never know what they're going to do if they leave. Number 2, contracts matter. Enforce strong non-competes. Enforce strong non-solicitation agreements. I love the class. I don't know if Ryan Pace teaches anymore. When I was here, Ryan Pace taught it. Loved him as a professor. He taught about business law, and we talked about contracts all the time. I use all of that stuff. Even though I'm an accountant by trade and my business partner is a lawyer, we kind of had some things backwards for a while, and I would do some of the legal and he would do some of the accounting. So those things matter. Understand how it works. I think non-competes in Utah, the legislature changed them. You can have a 1-year non-compete as of 2016. Understand things like that. Protect yourself, and then treat everybody really well. Don't let them leave. Give them a great job, because when they leave, if you have an amazing business, like American Express, like Amazon, like Funded Today, you're going to face competition. And that competition knows you better than all the other dumb competition that's out there. The grass isn't greener on the other side. I spent a lot of time putting together this presentation and thinking about everything I wanted to say. But even last night, I couldn't sleep. And we stayed up till like 2 a.m. putting it together, some of the thoughts we wanted to share. And my business partner, who couldn't be here today, he's like, make sure you tell him that. Like, there's always something behind the roses. You know, even when the grass is greener on the other side, it's muddy because it's wet and you're walking in it. Like, that kind of stuff matters. I showed the double-edged sword, right? 2 sides of the coin. A funny little thing, right? I have the worst job in the world. There's always someone who has it worse than you. There's always someone who has it better. Even the glossy, amazing story that is Funded Today has all kinds of nuances to it. And that's the way it is with every single business. The Zuckerberg story I shared. The guys are like not sleeping for 2 days coding. That's not the life you want to live. Be happy with where you are, but strive to get to greater places. Lesson number 15. Perspective is a very private experience. Some people in my company will roll their eyes at this one because we say it so much. We have core values at Funded Today, and this is one of those core values. But it's so true. In Mandarin, the story of this elephant here is 盲人摸象, and it means blind man touch elephant. Everybody's touching a piece of that elephant, right? You've got this guy touching the tail, and he thinks the elephant's a snake. This guy up here thinks it's something else. These people behind are thinking it's a tree trunk. Everybody thinks the elephant is something that it's not. And that's the case in our business. Nobody is some omniscient being that can understand everything. When I tell my people something, they're like, why? Why are you doing that? And then I explain all my reasons. Yeah, but here's my reasoning. And then we've elevated a lot of people in our company to managers and directors now, and I don't do a lot of the stuff I ever used to do. And some of those managers come to me, they're like, man, I know what you were talking about all those years now. Now I see what happened in those roles. I see how people respond, and I'm just bashing my head against a wall. How do they not get it? I'm like, that's the truth. Perspective is a private experience in every single thing you do in life. Your relationships. I mean, I went through a divorce through all of this success story. And in that divorce, I lost my wife. I lost tons of stuff, and we just could not see eye to eye. And that was exactly because of a perspective. I love the quote by Michelangelo when he's painting the Sistine Chapel. If you knew how much work went into it, you wouldn't call it genius. I feel the same way about Funded Today and a lot of my own achievements in life. I don't necessarily think I'm special or I'm anything better than anybody else. I think there's always something there, and that's where perspective comes in. And I think it matters. And I think we can use this in everything we do, both in business and in life. We can understand that there's always something going on. We can assume the positive. When someone says something terrible to you, they might be having a bad day with their wife. When someone cuts you off in traffic, they're not being an idiot. They're just going through something else. If we take approaches like that with business and the decisions we make in life, I think the world's going to be a better place. And I think your businesses are going to be more successful because people will understand that you're compassionate, that you're understanding, and that you're willing to try to see things from their point of view, even though you have firmly held beliefs yourself. I guess I should share that picture too. I love that one. He's painting a bird, but look at an egg. Some of you are probably looking at that egg and thinking, I want to make a scrambled egg or something because you're hungry because it's noon. But there's always a different perspective to how things go. Lesson number 16. You build great wealth by owning businesses. That's the truth. My entire life, I've owned businesses, whether it was the snow cone shop, the landscaping company that I still own, Start Doing Business, Agile Holding Group, Smith Investments, which is a money lending firm, and Funded Today. All of those companies have made it so that I can have great wealth. And a lot of people don't understand that. I actually found some stats, and I believe it's 80% of self-made millionaires made it by being an entrepreneur, owning businesses, buying and owning businesses. The number's really high. I look at it all the time too. It's one of my favorite questions. Anytime I see, I guess it's my curiosity, I don't know, but I say, what did you do? How did you do it? You know, you see somebody driving a car, having a nice house, or doing something, or vacationing. I always like to dig into it. Even though I don't ask, I'm like, what are they doing? How are they doing it? And it always seems to come down to the case. Oh, they have a business. They have this. Accountants and lawyers, maybe you go and work for somebody, but then you become partner. That's owning a business. There's lots of ways to get to owning businesses. But if you're looking for wealth, financial prosperity, you build great wealth by owning businesses. That's Marcus Lemonis. Probably you've seen the show The Profit, one of my favorite shows on TV, but he owns a lot of businesses. I think he's worth 900 million, maybe $1 billion. Pretty self-made too. And then Mark Cuban had his first successful business, and now he owns hundreds. That was just a screenshot of what I could fit on the slide. There's even more as I was scrolling down on his website, markcubancompanies.com. You build great wealth by owning businesses, and I'm trying to apply that too. Lesson number 17. Entrepreneurship is largely sales and negotiation. I left this one out. This was one of the things we thought of last night because I could not leave it out. I think sales sometimes gets a negative connotation. You know, the used car salesman, the sleazy person. I think you absolutely have to be honest in your salesmanship. But I think salesmanship and negotiation matter so much. If you go to Funded Today's website, big and bold, look how much money we've raised. Look at all these testimonials. Look at all of this. Look at all this. We're doing everything we can to convince somebody to hire us. It sells. When I'm negotiating contracts with Kickstarter or Indiegogo or our clients, it's negotiation. It sells. I took a lot of sales classes at Weber State, actually. A lot of technical sales classes, just because I found it interesting to learn those sorts of things. I love the book Spin Selling. I like the book In Business, As in Life, You Don't Get What You Deserve, You Get What You Negotiate. Long title, that's literally the title. But it's a great book. It talks about how to we deal with international clients all the time. And Curtis can tell you, those clients sometimes negotiate way different than us. Sometimes we'll talk, and they're just silent. It's more like an Asian style of negotiating. And we talk and reveal everything, and then they're like, here's what I want. And they always win until we kind of figured out the way they negotiate. In negotiation, you always want it to be a fair balance. You want the other person to come out thinking that they won, but negotiation and salesmanship are so important in everything you do. I think I actually can say this. If you can't learn those things, or you were like, I don't know if I can do that, I'd probably say entrepreneurship's not for you. That's how important salesmanship and negotiation are. They just matter so much. I love those cartoons too, because it's also perspective. A lot of times we have to spin for PR, you have to spin a bad situation into something good. That's exactly what's happening here. He's turned the sales chart, and even though things are tanking, hey, when you look at it this way, it's not that bad. You have to have that kind of mindset, and you have to have that sort of humor, because the hustle and grind of entrepreneurship will wear you down. Lesson number 18. This one's kind of negative, but it's what we found time and time again. Everybody heard of Tom Shoes? That company's pretty dang successful, but most companies aren't. Don't launch charitable for-profit ventures. What I mean by this is if you have a water bottle that you want to sell, don't say, if you buy this water bottle, I'm going to donate the same amount of water to a third world country in Africa. First, build an amazing water bottle. And then, once you've built the amazing product that everybody wants, add a charitable component. That's a great idea. It's a good sales tactic. Everybody wants to have a for-profit, everybody wants to have a charity, or they want to do something for good, and I do too. I love the idea of doing good. But let's look at some of the biggest companies in the world. What is Google doing? All kinds of amazing stuff. That stuff doesn't make Google any money, and maybe 20, 30 years down the road, they're going to make tons of money from it, but I don't even think they're hoping to realize profit. I think they're taking all the money they made from Google search and from Facebook advertising with Facebook, and then they're taking all that money, and then they're doing good with it. They're doing charity. The biggest people and the biggest companies in the world that are doing some of the most good in terms of like total amount of money are the people that had for-profit successful businesses that are then diversifying those profits to ventures that they care deeply about. Bill Gates. I think he's one of the most charitable people in the world, right? Microsoft. Lesson number 19. Your role as an entrepreneur changes over time. So what I mean, if you want it to, my company's mid-range now. It's mid-level. It's not just me and Thomas anymore. So I asked a bunch of people when I was preparing this presentation that I really trust. I said, because they're like, a lot of people you talk to and a lot of people you run into, they're just not like you and Thomas. They're not like some of the successful entrepreneurs. And they're going about it all the wrong way. So I thought of a way so you can know if you're going about it the right way or not. And it's simple. Make money. Learn how to get to revenue fast. If you're every day when you sit down at night and you have a nightly review, think to yourself, did I make money today? Did I do anything to grow revenue? And if you keep thinking that question, you will eventually reach success. I think that's the best way to keep you centered. And that's what I've learned too. And then when you do it, grow it. Once you've figured out how to make money, if you've been asking yourself, what did I do? How did I get there? You can duplicate the process, and then you can grow that revenue. And then when you've grown that revenue, build a team and learn to let go. Thomas's wife was telling a story, and she said Thomas was the one doing a lot of paid media stuff for us originally. He was the one in the trenches, and I was doing all the sales and negotiation for all of our clients. I mean, that's the type of business we started. And Thomas's wife's like, Thomas, you got to let go. He's like, but it's me. I understand it. I know it better than anybody. I mean, he was the only one in the world who was doing this. Like, no joke. He was the only one in the world doing what he did as it relates to what we were doing. And his wife said, let go. You're going to kill yourself. You're working so crazy. And he was working really hard. And ultimately he did. He built out a process, he built a system, and he trained people how to do it. And now he hasn't had to do that at all. And we do it even better. Because once you train people, once you build a system, the people you hire ultimately become better than yourself. They become amazing. Curtis, great example. Give him a shout out since he's here. He's a better salesman than me because he's done it more, he's learned processes, and he's done hundreds, maybe even thousands more calls than I've done now. It matters. Finally, and I kind of hinted on this already, design and improve processes. I talked about the designing processes. The simplest way to do that is to ask yourself, what am I doing more than once? As soon as you ask yourself that, duplicate the process. Okay, here's what I did, here's how I did it, here's the steps, here's what I do. And then you can literally create job descriptions and templates for your people to do so that your business becomes systematic. A great book that kind of teaches this and a really nice example is the E-Myth. The E-Myth teaches you to work on your business, not in your business. In your business meaning doing the calls. On your business meaning training somebody to do the calls. And then improve processes. That's what we're doing all the time. Just like I said, anytime we can, we're trying to pivot, we're trying to improve. This keeps running into a hang-up. What can we do to change it? Oh, here's what we do. Here's how we change it. Here's how we fix that. And then this one, and I kind of talked about this quite a bit. Smith Investments Holding Group is an example of using capital and profit from my other successful businesses to run a lending firm, where I now make pretty good money lending money for homes. I found a need in the market. People don't like paying 20% PMI, and so or if they don't put 20% down on their house, they don't like having to pay the PMI. And so I offer a way for people with pretty decent credit to qualify for a home and do short-term loans until they can qualify from a bank. And it's been really successful. And Thomas has done that the same way. He invests in REITs. He has other different charitable ventures that he does. Build new ventures. You don't have to stop at the first one. Sounds crazy, but if you're a serial entrepreneur, you shouldn't be happy with your first baby. You need to build more and more and more. And organize them and run them in a way such that they don't require your attention on the day-to-day. I'm going to touch on this one just very briefly. This is something we teach at Funded today. It's called SLCRR. Not the most beautiful acronym. I guess you can think of SLC, Salt Lake City. Anytime I say I'm from Utah, people are like, oh, Salt Lake City? Yeah, sure, somewhere around there. So SLCRR. It's simple things you can ask yourself so that you can improve your processes, grow your business, and think big picture. Think 80-20. If you don't have a business yet, you could change these questions to be, what service or product could I offer? How could I increase inbound or outbound leads to that product? How do I close more people on my product or service? How can I generate even greater results for higher profits for the people I'm working for, if that's your industry? Or how can I generate greater products and profits for myself? How can I get repeat customers? These are the questions we ask ourselves, and that is what is so amazing. When we asked ourselves, what additional service or products could we offer? We realized that when I originally did the Roo Sport, I made the video, I did the page. And then we forgot about it for 3 years. So for the last year, we've grown a creative division that will do $1 million in revenue. We do all the video design, all the page work. That came from asking that simple question. How can we close more clients? How can we get results? How can we get repeat customers? If you ask yourself those questions, it helps to shift your mindset from being stuck in the work to big picture, perspective, and you can get bigger and better results. Lesson number 21. Entrepreneurship has the greatest risk to return of anything you'll ever undertake, ever. I love this one. And I love it for a lot of different reasons. I don't like talking about money so much because once money comes, it's great, but it doesn't change you that much. I think there's some stat out there that says if you make like 70, 80 grand a year, any amount over that doesn't really change you too much. And it can. I mean, you see the the Mike Tysons of the world that have billions and then they blow it all, they go crazy, but they lose it all, right? But if you remain principled and conservative, I don't think money is the reason to do what you do. And I'll talk about that in a final point. But using an example to illustrate wealth, I'll make $5 million this year between all my different ventures. That's my net profit. The average median income, let's call it 60,000 bucks. What's the math on that? 83.33 years or something? So I will make as much money in 1 year as it would take in 83 years to make that same amount. I think you can take risks at a younger age because the reward can be so great. That's kind of what I want to illustrate. I think you need to think that way. I tell it to my dad all the time, even though he's like 50-something now. Your construction business is so good. Quit everything you're doing and it will succeed. I know it will succeed. I'll help you. But he doesn't take that risk because he is a little older, and I can understand why. And that's probably why. But the numbers are there. Everything's there. He's even got it. He's got what it looks like for 2.5 months. You can be the same way. You can take risks. Thomas Albert is a better story of this. He got a degree from BYU, and then he got another degree from BYU with an MPA, and then he got another degree from BYU with a JD. And all along, he was kind of like me, serial entrepreneur. He did like a clerkship or something. That was about it. And he did a lot of political stuff, of course, with his MPA degree. But he was like never satisfied. And he thought about things in a big picture. And his wife would be like, go get a job. You're an attorney, an MPA. You could probably make $100,000 a year with everything you have at least, and you can support our family. I mean, his struggle was real, but he just knew it was going to work. He saw it. He saw it in the numbers. He felt it. Entrepreneurship was in his blood. And look what happened. It was well worth the risk and the pain for a few tough years, for some amazing years to follow. Bonus lesson number 1, company culture matters, and you must ultimately find your higher purpose in life. These are bigger lessons because it's kind of where I'm at now. Yeah, I kind of did it younger. I'm 30 years old, and it's, what do I do with the rest of my life? I had to start thinking, it's not really fun to make a ton of money anymore. What do you do? What matters? And that's what we've done at Funded Today. We've created culture. We have a culture of 9 core values that we believe in. Perspective is a private experience. We believe in the little guys. Under promise, over deliver. Things like that. And everybody can chant them and recite them and talk about them. And it helps us remember what we're doing and why we're doing it. And going along with that, I think it helps us find our higher purpose. I love what Richard Branson said. Explore this next great frontier, where the boundaries between work and higher purpose are merging into one. Where doing good really is good for business. That's awesome, right? You can create a great business. We have a great business at Funded Today. We've made thousands of people's dreams come true. And then we've told thousands of others that their dream can't come true because it's not the right product. So you get the grass is greener on the other side sort of complex there too. You can do really good things, and you can create really amazing businesses that change lives. We're in an amazing world, and it's so much easier now than it ever was before. And finally, entrepreneurs can shape the world. When you grow up and you tend to get told the world is the way it is, and your life is just to live your life inside this little world. Try not to bash in the walls too much. Try to have a nice family, have fun, save a little money if you can. That's a very limited life. Life can be much broader once you discover one simple fact. Everything around you that you call life was made up by people that were no smarter than you, and you can change it. You can influence it. You can build your own things that other people can use. Once you learn that, you'll never be the same again. Thank you.
Before we have lunch, anybody have any questions?
You mentioned earlier about 7 Ps. Can you list those 7 Ps?
Yeah, so let's do this. I have the internet, I think. I can spell right, huh? So there's the article. If you just go to that, you can get a whole in-depth analysis of them. And if you tweet me, I did tweet out the presentation links. I'm Tweet Zach Smith. If you just message me, I'll give you a nice little graphic you can print out of the 7 Ps and any other graphics you want to look at.
Right here.
You mentioned that you know that with crowdfunding is kind of plateauing and eventually those kind of things die. Do you have any idea of what you're going to do next, or are you going to?
Well, it's hard to know if it's dying because it's growing. Yeah, it's growing, but it's not doing the 10%. So it's very, very small growth. So I wouldn't say it's dying. It doesn't look like it's dying at all. You can be a cash cow in those industries forever. So I would look at it though, absolutely. I will follow those trends and I will look at how things are going. That's what made me pivot from my first business, by the way. The reason I didn't keep doing what I was doing at Epic Profit Group was because I saw it dying. And I was right actually on that one. It did die. Now it's kind of moving into some other things, so it survived with a weird pivot, but it definitely died with what we were doing, so I made the good move there. And I hope I can make it if that were to ever happen here. Right here?
So going back to lesson number 3, you said find a mentor and work for a good boss. How do you identify a good boss?
That is a dang good question. Well, hopefully I'm one.
Okay.
But I think, well, here's a good example. Here's a good thing. Figure out who else works for that boss. Ask them. I like that idea. It's the curiosity thing again. Hey, I really think this looks good. Is it good? And talk. I like to get a good sample size, statistical significance or something, but maybe 3 or 4 people. Ask them, do you like working for this person? Why? What don't you like about them? Can you tell me? Like, I won't tell them. I really just want to know. I want to see if this would be a good mentor for me. I like that, maybe. Good question. Yeah?
Were you as confident when you were sitting in these chairs? As you are now?
That's an amazing question. Even though I project that confidence, even now that confidence isn't there, if that makes sense. And I think maybe there's a principle about trying to be humble. Like, you have to just realize it's really hard to make it. The stats of raising over $100,000 on Kickstarter Indiegogo are really small. And even our success rate is only like 40% maybe. It's hard, it's tough to raise money. And you face the disappointment of people's dreams who don't come true because you didn't raise the money. But I believed in myself, but truth be told, I thought the same way. If I can make 70, 80 grand, maybe eventually become partner, 6 figures, something like that, it's gonna be a pretty good life. That's kind of how I thought. So I don't think having those thoughts is bad. And I don't even necessarily believe you have to go out and just risk everything. I think you can be very conservative and principled and work really hard and dedicate more. You have a lot of time in a day to do a lot of things. So I believe in calculated risk. My business partner, Thomas, is a lot different. He's more like just go for it, which is good because it balances us. There's something to be said about partnerships too. Networking and balance and having somebody who complements you. Some of my other partners weren't as good, but Thomas is so different than me in so many ways and similar in others. And so it helps to create a good balance. That's something I would actually like to say. You need somebody. I don't know, maybe there's some really successful solo entrepreneurs, but I imagine they probably have a lot of people around them. I don't think you can be an entrepreneur without somebody else. Does that help?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
How do you reward your crowdfunding investors? You said you had reward-based crowdfunding. What's the formula? Because people just don't, some crowdfunding, here's some money, good luck.
Yeah, so
What's the difference?
the reason reward-based crowdfunding is so cool is because of something called product validation. You literally, let's say this was a prototype. It kind of looks pretty beat up. This is a prototype of a water bottle. This might be the only water bottle you have. You tell everybody this water bottle is going to cost $20 and I need $20 for it. And if I get 1,000 people to give me $20, 20,000 bucks, I'm going to give you one. The reward is the product, ultimately, should they be able to do what they say they can do. Does that make sense?
So if someone sends you $20, are they going to end up with a kangaroo pouch?
Exactly. Yep. Exactly right.
Yeah.
Yep.
But only if there's enough money raised to get to this.
Exactly. That was the story with FreeWaves. They had raised $190,000. They needed $300,000 to do it. And so until they got to $300,000, nobody was going to get it, even the people that had given the total amount of $190,000.
How would you do something like that for a service-based business venture? Is it possible?
Well, our business is service-based, but in terms of crowdfunding for a service-based, so that's one of our 7 Ps. Platform. Platform matters. And I use the example of my landscaping company. If I were to try to raise money on Kickstarter Indiegogo for my landscaping company, the platform's probably wrong. Why? Because I'm probably only able to do landscaping for people in Utah, at least to start. And so that immediately limits my market, 1 in 50 states. Secondly, it's the type of thing that might be hard to get people to do. And so the platform's wrong. The right platform is people's doors. It's knocking doors. It's hiring people to go and say, would you like your lawn mowed? Can we also do your fertilization? Can we also do your weed control? And I think that's the right platform for that. And generally for most service businesses, I'd say it's that way. Apps are similar. Apps are not really a good place to raise, crowdfunding is not really a good place to raise money for apps. Does that help? Okay. Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Great. Let's go ahead and